Hello everybody! Welcome to another episode of the Vesper's Retro Reviews. I'm Ramses.
And I'm the Vespor.
And today we're going to review The A-Team, Season 1, the complete look at the entire season.
This is a follow-up to our previous episode where we looked at the first episode of the season, specifically the pilot episode, known as Mexican Sleigh Ride. This serves as the first episode of the season. As we promised, we are back to take a complete look at each season, starting with the first one. After the 2-hour pilot episode debuted during the Super Bowl on January 23rd, 1983, the show was set and in place to make its mid-season debut with 12 more episodes to be shown for the season, making a total of 13 or 14 episodes, depending on if you count the pilot as 1 or 2 episodes.
Season 1 ran on the NBC Network from January 23rd, 1983 to May 10th, 1983. The first few episodes would be shown on Sunday night until it would be moved to Tuesday nights at 8 p.m., where it would find itself for the next few seasons, becoming an early Tuesday night NBC staple program. The ratings for the first season were pretty good considering it was a mid-season replacement show. It had a rating of 20.1 and put it in a rank of 10 and would only go up from here for the next 2 seasons at least, so they definitely had a very unexpected hit program here.
Guest stars appearing in episodes will become a main part of the series as well, especially later on in its existence. But the first season had more than its share of notable stars in various episodes, most of the times not playing themselves, but taking on vital roles of adversaries that the A-Team had to deal with for that week's mission.
Memorable stars such as Clifton James, famous for his role of Sheriff J.W. Pepper in the 007 James Bond series. We also had former boxer Ken Norton, our favorite holographic friend from Quantum Leap. We have Dean Stockwell. You may know him better as the voice of Launchpad the Quack, but yes, Terrence McGovern was a guest star on an episode this season as well. We recognized him right away when we saw him, Danny Wells, who was Luigi on the Super Mario Bros. Super Show, and he had a memorable moment as a director in an episode. And last, but definitely not least, we have Joanna Kearns, who you may or may not remember in the role of the mother, Maggie Seaver, on the sitcom Growing Pains. And that's not to mention all the iconic character actors who you'll have seen in hundreds of shows and movies, also adding to the A-Team lore, as it were, with their roles throughout the 14 episodes that showed up this season.
There isn't too much to note as far as updates to the show's cast or changes that were made from what we mentioned in our pilot episode review. The biggest change, of course, is that Dirk Benedict will portray Templeton Peck for the remainder of the series, starting in the episode following the pilot, replacing the too young-looking Tim Dunnigan. But we do want to give an overview of things for the season in general before we take a deeper look at the remaining 12 episodes of the season that we haven't looked at yet.
George Peppard portrays team leader John Hannibal Smith, and as this season went on and became more successful, so too did the actor become tougher to work with. Mr. T would have much more memorable moments in the later episodes of the season than he did in the pilot, as he portrays mechanic and the muscle of the team, B.A. Baracus. And thank goodness they didn't remove crazy yet lovable and flying expert H.M. Howlin' Mad Murdoch, portrayed by Dwight Schultz. And yes, Amy Amanda Allen, portrayed by Melinda Coolio, would show up for most of the episodes of the season, but her role would be very reduced or background in nature for many of the episodes. But when she gets time to shine, she is still a very vital and important part of the team.
Some of the biggest cast problems for this season were George Peppard related. By the end of this season, he and Mr. T were not on talking terms. There are many stories or reasons behind it, but let's just say that George resented that he is a longtime actor who worked his way to where he was and feels he earned it, as opposed to Mr. T, who was the real star of the show, who got the big money and attention, and George Peppard resented him for that. George would have Dirk Benedict relay messages to Mr. T and not even refer to Mr. T by name when talking about him, only referring to him as just the man with the goal.
Yes, George was very difficult to deal with. He had resentment with Melinda Coolio as well, who he felt wasn't needed in the series, making it tough for her to come into her own. And even when he first met Dwight Schultz on the set, he told him, "Very good, I'm George Peppard, and I'm not a nice man," setting the tone for how dealing with him would go. But Dwight Schultz and Dirk Benedict always kept on good terms with their co-stars, even with the hard-at-times personalities that were around them. In this season, we will learn a lot more of the team as the story unfolded. The thing about the A-Team is that you can watch any episode at any time, and you won't be lost, as the episodes aren't connected. But there are some common themes that are established here, like Colonel Lynch, their main adversary, still shows up a few times trying to stop them, only to be outwitted by the team or some weird circumstance removes his authority over them and they are freed from his capture once more.
You will also see the van used often this season. Billy, the imaginary dog of Murdoch, makes his debut in this season, mentioned in 2 episodes. The team will wear their military garb in an episode honoring a fallen soldier, showing their further connection to being former soldiers.
It wasn't always just they are hired and sent to a location to save others this season, and even in the first season they realized they have to mix up the storylines a bit to keep it fresh and different, but still have that A-team feel either way, no matter what situations they found themselves in.
Now, some elements established for the various actors that were played up on during this season are: Hannibal is very clearly a for-hire actor who takes bit parts and explains how he's able to disguise himself so easily, which he will do often this season. No matter what, he never is worried, intimidated, or deterred. Even when captured or beat up, you will always see him smiling and actually liking that the enemy is being bothered by what he is doing. This means he is on the jazz.
BA's fear of flying is focused on in many episodes during the season, with the team having to trick him into getting knocked out so they can get him onto a plane. And we actually find out what happens when he does get stuck on a plane while awake during an episode 2. His rivalry with Murdoch is played up on, but it would get worse and focused on more in later seasons, as would his love for his van and his skills as a driver.
Face is shown as the least effective fighter here, and that's something that will remain true throughout the series. He didn't get many moments to be the con man or using his looks to get things done. Face's manipulation and conning skills would get more play later.
Murdoch will have some interesting uses this season as they show his flying skills, where he's able to fly any vehicle, whether it be a prop plane, helicopter, or a commercial airliner. They don't focus on breaking Murdoch out of the mental hospital too much this season though. He'll just sort of be with the team most of the time or show up on his own somehow. This too would be more established later on, where they make a point of showing him getting broken out from the hospital. Also, he didn't have the split personalities that he would go on in later seasons to have. There was a few times with Billy his dog and him acting as Captain Bellybuster, for instance, and they even show signs that Murdoch is not as insane as he would have us all believe, showing his knowledge in science in great details in many moments.
And lastly, Amy, as mentioned, gets minor usage for most of the episodes, serving as the behind-the-scenes member who would make sure others are taken care of or helping other females as needed while the A-team did the grunt work. But she more than served as a useful member through the season, but sadly Amy doesn't get the full utilization that one would hope after seeing her in the pilot episode, which is really too bad, as I will go on record just saying that I like the Amy character and do wish she was utilized more in the series. We'll talk more about her departure and replacement when we get to talk about Season 2.
The iconic theme of the A-Team that was composed by Mike Post and Pete Carpenter will finally show up in the episode following the pilot, and it will use mostly footage from the pilot episodes for its moments, with select moments from the first few episodes also thrown in here and there. 4 seasons, the opening credits will also have narration that informs the viewer of the plot of the A-Team before the iconic song begins. It should be noted that the theme song remains mostly the same for 4 seasons, but in the first season, the narration that starts off the opening credits is different and will be changed for the 2nd to 4th season. The first season will state that their wrongful arrest happened 10 years ago, as we join them 10 years later for the first season. Since each season is a passing of time, they will change the passage to state that their arrest and escape happened clearly in 1972 for the 2nd to 4th seasons. The 5th season, which would be a new format to the show, had a remixed version of the theme and no narration at all found.
And there you go. That is some of the background information in regards to the A-Team for the first season. So, without further delay, our thoughts on the remaining episodes of the season.
That's right, we already told you about the pilot. Be sure to watch that episode if you haven't seen it yet. Here we go, the 12 remaining episodes of Season 1. Children of Jamestown, directed by Christian Nibby II. Written by Stephen J. Cannell, originally broadcast on January 30th, 1983. And the plot of the episode is, the A-Team is hired to rescue a wealthy man's daughter from a religious cult, led by the insane Reverend James.
This episode starts expanding upon what we see in the opening pilot. And what we're going to see is that you're going to have a montage in this episode. You're going to have the A-Team being contacted, all the things we talked about earlier.
Alright, so the episode's all about a religious cult leader. So it's based off of the Jamestown cult that took place in 1978. This was happening in the 70s, where these religious cults were happening and they became like their own entity. They were kidnapping kids. And that's pretty much what this is about. The A-Team are hired to rescue a girl who was kidnapped by this cult. The cult leader is this insane, crazy guy named Reverend James, and he's played by John Saxon. So in this version, they're calling it the Jamestown cult, and it's the same idea. The A-Team rescues the girl, but now they're captured by the cult and they have to deal with getting free from the cult themselves. So it's a whole build-up between how religious is this guy. Hannibal and the Reverend pretty much one-on-one. They're very strong adversaries, and this becomes a little bit of a silent war between the two, which of course Hannibal will win the end.
When you look at it, they're both leaders, but the difference is that Hannibal is a true leader of his men and cared. The Reverend here obviously didn't care about his followers and was using them just for power's sake. Now, here's some things that we thought were of extreme note. When you watch a show, you have to suspend disbelief. But also, while we suspend disbelief to enjoy the show, doesn't mean that we can't come back later to make fun of it. And one of those moments is this. The A-Team has been caught, and they've been released so they could be hunted by the cultists. While the A-Team is over 300 feet away, the cultists are on a dirt road in Jeeps with bad suspension, firing full auto and always managing just to hit the ground at their feet with the bullets.
And yes, every time they shot from a football field's length away, it would always be a straight line right on the ground, just missing them. The special effect here was not done very well. I get what they were going for, but they should have had them much closer, and it should not have been such an exact line. It looked very awkward the way they were doing that.
In the final battle, Murdoch was in a helicopter, and he was leaning out the door, smoking a cigar, and having sticks of dynamite. Well, not only did he have one stick of dynamite, he was tying 3 of them together and just dropping them and causing explosion. To give you an idea, 1 stick of dynamite can dislodge a small stump from the ground, not sitting on top of it, but still in it. So not like a little puff.
So you can imagine what 3 sticks of dynamite realistically would have done. He's throwing these around like nothing. He's taking the 3 sticks of dynamite, mind you, after what the Vespor just said what 1 can do, tossing it down to give little poofs. It was just so ridiculous and unbelievable the way they were utilizing the dynamite in this episode.
Here's something else to talk about. Helped emphasize the montage. They're making a water cannon, rocket launcher, or mortar, and they also made a beautiful flamethrower. Quite amazing.
It was actually a pretty good effect. Yeah, they're going around in this flamethrower, all the buildings catch on fire. It was actually pretty cool for what it was.
After all, what you're going to learn quickly in all these episodes is if there's a montage, the A-Team is not going to lose. Now, the symbology in this episode is really great. And that symbology is in the Reverend's room. There's an old dusty Bible sitting on a counter. Hannibal picks it up, looks at it, and puts it back down. The symbology being this Reverend wasn't holy at all. It was just in it for the power.
The Bible that he was carrying around with him and sat by his bed, he never opened.
Now, after going over what stood out the most to us, we like to give a rating out of 5 stars.
5 being the best and 0 being the worst. Alright, so I'll start this off. I'm going to give it 3 stars. It's the next episode after the pilot, and they build on the foundation very well. This is what the A-Team do. They're going to be hired, they're going to go in somewhere, they're going to have to outsmart the bad guy, and they're going to be victorious at the end. That's the form of the A-Team. They're going to have to build some crazy contraption to do it. They do so very well here with the flamethrower. They're going to have a lot of witty lines, and they're going to have Hannibal being Hannibal. He shows up at the end, grabs his boots, and that's what he wanted all the time, to get his boots back. He wasn't going to let him get away with that. It's definitely better than average. It's not the greatest A-Team episode, but you know something? I thought they did a good job starting things off on that note.
And I will give it 3.5 stars. I felt this was very good. It had almost all the aspects that you would expect later seasons to have of A-Team episodes. In this episode, they already started in the middle of the action instead of you seeing them come to them first, but still, it's very good. I feel this is a step above some of the other episodes in the first season, so I gave it a 3.5.
Now we move on.
Pros and cons. Director Ron Setloff. Written by Stephen J. Cannell. Was aired February 8th, 1983. In this episode, B.A.'s friend, Jace, is sent to a prison where he must fight in death matches for the amusement of the warden and several high-profile gamblers. B.A. enlists the other members of the A-Team to help out his friend.
So this episode has a lot of guest stars. It has Clifton James, and he pretty much plays a similar role in this episode that he played in the James Bond as the corrupt, not serious, evil warden in this one, and he did very well. He's probably one of the best parts of the episode is his portrayal here. And we have a lot of interesting moments. There's a lot of stuff going on. You have Hannibal with his pursuing a failing movie career where he's taking bit parts, and you have with B.A. Baracus' friend who's getting in trouble now with the whole jail system, and they have to figure out how to help him. This is going to be one of those freebies. They're not going to be hired. This is because it's a friend of the team, and that'll be another theme that happens in some episodes where it's personal, and when it's personal, they'll do it for free. So here are our standout moments for
Pros and cons. To help his friend Chase, they were going to infiltrate this prison. Well, to do so, they had to get arrested. To get arrested, they did speeding and drunk driving and all these things that would instantly get you arrested.
So yes, they're arresting 2 people. They don't have enough room in the jail, so they pretty much just were going to let them go with a warning, and that was it.
So they end up driving their car through the front of the police station.
That's the moment. They drive the car right through the police station, and the next thing you see, they're arrested and they wind up in the prison.
Now, they have a running gag through this entire episode because part of their infiltration is they're going to have Face portray a certain doctor, a Dr. Pepper.
I'm a pepper. Wouldn't you like to be a pepper too?
Besides the pilot, this is the first time you'll see Dirk Benedict showing his skills as a con artist and trying to trick someone. And he's taking the role of an author for some weird psychology book.
B.A. went in as a deaf and mute man and was going to work his way into the Fight Club so he could participate in them
and hopefully rescue everybody and stop the whole thing from happening.
The bigger, more interesting part about this is the fact that Hannibal had to convince the warden with Dr. Pepper. The interesting thing about this hairstylist is that this is going to be how they're going to escape. How are they going to escape with a hairstylist? Well, it involves Murdoch, where most of the episode inside of the prison going,
Trash bags! I want trash bags!
and, well, how are they going to escape using trash bags and hair supply? They're going to tie them to lawn chairs and fill the trash bags with hot air from blow dryers. And they're going to float over the walls.
It's ridiculous, but it's funny. No way you're flying a chair with some trash bags and a hairdryer. And then the last classic moment was the ending, because remember, Hannibal's a struggling actor, so they bring in these cameras to show all these horrible, evil people sitting around this pit watching him, and then they're filming him on a camera, and then it's released to the news, and it's sort of left mysterious who was behind it, and then Hannibal's talking to the agent, and Hannibal's about to say that he was the one that did it, but at the last second stops.
Now it's time for our thoughts and ratings of this episode. This episode, unlike the first two, is actually very comedic, I feel. There's a lot more humor involved, and this is quite lighthearted. There's some very much so over-the-top action, which you will get to see throughout the entire series, which is honestly why we love the series. As far as the story goes, I feel it was only a 2.5. Completely average. It didn't have the zing, I guess you could say, that other episodes have had. It's not bad, just average.
My thoughts are very similar to that, actually. I didn't hate the episode. I thought it was fun. There was a lot of funny moments. Even Amy gets in her moments. I thought every cast member did well here. Murdoch shouting trash bags the whole time. It was funny. They had some good moments here. But the story is very average. It's kind of silly. A lot of far-fetched things had to happen. There was a lot of corruption, a lot of silly moments that happened. I'm going to give it 2.5 stars. It's one of those really in the middle of the road. It had a lot of good stuff, but the story is very weak. It had its moments, but definitely an average episode. 2.5 stars all the way. Alright, and now we move on to A Small and Deadly War. Directed by Ron Satloff and written by Frank Lupo. And it originally aired on February 15th, 1983. Police Inspector Ed Maloney seeks the A-Team's help in bringing down a renegade LAPD SWAT team that has been committing crimes for money. So yes, this was a very guest star-filled episode, and it's going to have a lot of locations. So this is one of those episodes that we're going to be all over LA pretty much as the action goes down.
Now, in this episode, BA states it's like the A-Team is going up against themselves. And pretty much it is. These people are professionals who know what they're doing. This episode, I'm going to say right now, is almost the quintessential A-Team episode. By this, I mean if you look at every episode, this is what you expect to have in it. For example, you have the Murdoch breaking out of the hospital. They are hired for service. They outsmart the bad guys. They have immense action moments. It's almost a quintessential A-Team episode because there's no building montage in it.
But BA does build the bugging device, and they are listening to them. So they still use equipment. They just didn't have the montage to defeat the bad guy.
Now, using that wonderful bugging device, they're able to stay one step ahead of the bad guys at all times. And due to this, it allows Hannibal to come up with his plan. This plan may not be so good. The rest of the A-Team sort of recognizes this plan as they state as follows. Face, I got shot in the leg. Murdoch, I got shot down. BA responding, that was a terrible plan. But Hannibal, always having the last word, says, but we got all the kinks worked out now.
Exactly. So yes, that was the flavor this is going to take. It's either hit or miss, and sometimes it'll work, but then when it didn't work, they just came up with something else.
And this is where they really start saying he's on the jab. Now, here's some funny things that we did notice. They had to infiltrate the police station as exterminators. Well, in one scene, you slow it down a little bit, you'll notice that Hermione Granger is actually a pest exterminator. The other fun thing with this is, since we're using a bug, they went as bug exterminators.
Now, yes, it was a double entendre. They're exterminating bugs, but they're putting bugs on all the uniforms. So what they did pretty much is they were spraying the stuff all over, the exterminators, and they were putting little buttons on all their uniforms, and that's pretty much how they get the bug device. Now, isn't this like the longest reaching bugging devices in the history of bug? Like,
yes.
Here all the way across town in this little van device?
Well, yes, but it's made by BA, so of course it works.
Right.
This episode does take a more closer turn to the very first pilot episode. It gets very serious very quickly. You're dealing with murderers here. They're having to outsmart them. They show why they're the A team in this episode. They literally take out the best of the best. People have been doing this for a long while.
Now, the real fun part of this episode is that these cops, all these evil SWAT members, are doing this for
$2,000 each or something?
So they're putting their careers and lives and freedom on the line.
For pretty much $2,000 per kill.
Yeah, I know it's 1983, but come on. I thought it was fun. They had the straight detective who didn't want any part of this, and then you had the evil SWAT team who was supposed to be like the counter A team. Like, you had the womanizer, that was Dean Stockwell. He was probably the best part of this episode. So it's all cumulative. So they're chasing him down, they're chasing him. Finally, they've had enough. They've met their match. Hannibal and their leader want to have it out. So they're going to meet up at like a amusement park fairground. And they had this final battle. And I think one of the best moments is the bad guys assume that they're all hiding in this like garage cover stand. Blast their automatic weapons.
Yeah, when they're blasting, they trick them by hiding up in the rafters.
Right.
Being on the ground.
Destroying the whole entire garage. They think they have them. Nope, they're hiding in the ceiling the whole time. And then, of course, the A-team beats them up. And then, what is it? Hannibal rides away on...
It's called the hanging basket.
Right, so Hannibal rides away to freedom and cue end credits. So yeah, this is actually a good episode, This is probably one of the best episodes so far, from the pilot all the way up to here. I think this is like the first episode you're like, wow, this is going to be a great series.
Exactly. So, I'll go ahead and start on this episode since I feel pretty strong about it. I give this one actually a 4 out of 5 stars. I feel that if they had the actual building montage in this would have easily been a 4.5, maybe in a 5 stars, because it has great writing, great action, a good story, and they handle it in a way that makes you believe they are the best of the best while retaining all their wonderful interactions as a team.
I thought it was a great episode too. I think I'm going to piggyback on him here. This is the quintessential, we'll use that word again, episode of A-Team. This is exactly what you want. It's a great adversary he has. The person hiring them is a great person too. This old detective who wants to do the right thing. He'll give all his money back to the A-Team if he has to. And the A-Team's like, listen, we just did your expenses. Here's your money back. Enjoy your retirement. So even the A-Team does things just because they know it's the right thing to do. So they didn't rob the man blind. They gave him back his money pretty much. It had great action moments. It had great use of characters. Everyone had a good part in the episode. I also think it's a 4-star episode. I really do. I really enjoyed it. It's not 5. It's missing a few aspects. I think the story was a little weird at times, but it was such an enjoyable episode. Who cares? This is one of those episodes that you're like, wow, this is what the A-Team is about. Yeah, you get really everything. If you want to watch an episode of the A-Team, watch A Small and Deadly War. You can't go bad with that.
So now, move on to Black Day at Bad Rock. Directed by Christian Nibby II, written by Patrick Hadsberg, and aired on February 22nd, 1983. In this episode, B.A. Baracus has received a gunshot wound in the leg, forcing Hannibal and Face to take him to a small-town doctor for help. The doctor assumes that he is part of a group of bikers that has threatened to return to Bad Rock for their captured leader. So she calls the sheriff, who arrests Hannibal and Face. Bad Rock defenseless, the A-Team allies with the sheriff to set up traps to defeat the bikers. Now, the first thing I want to say is that the only person that can donate blood to BA is Murdoch. So they set up a whole fun montage of Murdoch rhyming and then getting BA to rhyme eventually, convincing him that they are the same blood.
Exactly. That was the running gag. See, like I said, Murdoch will sometimes have personalities. In this one, he was rhyming for unknown reasons. He was just rhyming randomly. And even that wore off by the end, which was funny. He stopped rhyming all of a sudden.
Some things that stood out the most to us in this episode is basically the fact that this was a cheaply made episode. Not all episodes can have the biggest explosions, the greatest sets, or anything like that. However, whenever I, who have suspended disbelief, look at this and go, those 4 buildings in this town that's supposed to have hundreds look completely empty and fake. And this town that is directly off a major highway is a dirt road.
So pretty much this is Universal trying to save money here. That's pretty much what this episode is. So they've done this before for movies, but when they do it for TV shows, obviously the budget's a lot less. So this is pretty much find a plot of dirt somewhere and build a whole town, and they did it so fakely and shabby looking that this is the most unbelievable town you've ever seen. Even when the bikers later in the episode are crashing through the walls, you can see these are empty hollow shells. There's nothing in these buildings that they're crashing into. There's sets that look like they were painted in 3 seconds. You have nothing to this town. This whole town of 2 people.
There's some very good moments in here, especially the ambush at the end. They use a lot of mental games to defeat the bikers, such as using toilet paper to make them think there's a wall there. Also, in this episode, you get to see the power of the A-Team by the fact that they ride Harleys.
And then when they're jumping over ramps, they're all on dirt bikes. Wow, how did that happen?
This episode is one of the more standout episodes of one shot, one explosion, as I like to call it. Because we have BA in that tower there shooting things.
Shooting and everything's exploding around them. It's amazing. In the 80s, 1983, they must have built things very explosive.
Or the bullets were just that powerful.
Oh, yeah, or they just built better bullets.
But another good thing about this episode that stood out was just there was some very good comedic elements to this, such as when they try to slow the gang down from hurting the town by literally hooking all their bikes up to a crane and lifting them into the air.
And shouldn't we mention they're going to keep using the same diner where this takes place at over
we can most definitely say that throughout this season, this diner and this turnoff might look very familiar because you're going to see it
again and again and again. They're going to change the name, but it's the same diner location that's going to be used in many episodes this season. So they had a lot of fun moments. So they would be in jail, they were locked up, captured the head biker, yet nobody else. It's always funny when you capture the leader, but none of the other grunts ever get captured. And of course, they're about to report them because, oh, this is the A-Team. So the A-Team come up with another one of their wacky, this would never work ways of getting out of the jail. Hannibal hides himself under all the covers in the mattress, and they say that he escaped. So of course, the officers open the jail up, and Hannibal was there all the time, just hiding under some blankets. Really a very low-budget episode.
And now, Ramses, what do you rate this?
Well, this is not a great episode. Like I said, it's middle of the road. It has your basic elements of A-Team versus gang, and that happens a lot in a lot of episodes. It's just such a low-budget episode that it's no better than 2.5. It's very middle of the road. I thought a lot of it was very stupid. I thought a lot of the moments just didn't work. It was so hard and unbelievable that this town is a town. It looks so fake and unbelievable that it was hard to suspend belief on that. But it's still a fun A-Team episode. It had action. It had some good one-liners. It had some funny moments. It had, montages and situations.
I gave it a 3. This was just a fun episode. It had sort of a serious feel to it. You can understand why the A-Team is there. A gang of bikers going to destroy a town. This sounds like something only the A-Team can accomplish. It had the montage. It had the camaraderie. So for me, it wasn't quite average. The story was better than that, although I couldn't give it higher just because of the fact that a lot of those things we talked about earlier with the cheap episodes, some plot holes, the story just wasn't all there. It could have been better with a little bit more time and probably a better set.
All right, moving on. The Rabbit Who Ate Las Vegas, directed by Bruce Kessler and written by Frank Lupo. It originally aired on March 1st, 1983. The A-Team are called to Las Vegas by 2 college girls to search for their missing professor, who developed the perfect gambling system. The team rescue him from Gianni Christian, a high-ranking mobster whose thugs couldn't understand the professor's explanations as to how the method worked. However, the episode has a nice twist when their rescue is cut short when Gianni is thrown to his death, and the team becomes the prime suspects of his murder because of the scam rescue they used to get the professor out of there. So yes, this show is interesting in that it's actually a 2-themed episode. So this episode starts out with a mobster feel to it. Mobsters capture this dorky professor. 2 girls hire the A-Team. They have no money, but it's 2 pretty girls, so why not? It becomes a Las Vegas episode now, where they have to rescue the dorky professor, and they do wind up doing that in the first half of the episode. And then the second half of the episode becomes now a whodunit. It's corruption, and the A-Team are now guilty of murder, and did they kill him? And it turns out it was just a mobster killing another mobster. So yeah, this was a nice twist on things, actually. With that Las Vegas feel, of course, because they have a lot of Las Vegas themed stuff going on during it, too.
I mean, this episode actually flows very quickly opposed to other ones. It's got a very good build-up, although I will admit at the beginning I didn't like it because I personally do not like a lot of mob shows. That's just my own personal preference, so I was sort of weary about this. But when they went from acting like mobsters to being corrupt government agents, I immediately fell in love with this episode. Then you get the double blind, the boss being killed, and you're like, oh, this is wonderful, this is fantastic. However, the most standout thing about this entire episode, Hannibal dresses up like a black guy. And not just a black guy, he has all the paint to go with it.
So yes, this episode does have a blackface moment, and we're not going to talk about the pros and cons of that. But yes, you will not see something like this again on TV ever again, so here it is. Of course, he fools him. It was a very good disguise, and it's very short-lived. He comes in there, he's just a random server in the background learning stuff. And you have to also remember, they're on the run. So what type of disguise? You change your look overall, you blend right in. So for the situation, it worked. For, you know, social ethics, no, it doesn't. But for the situation, interesting little bit of history that we probably won't see again on the TV shows.
Not only that, because even in the 80s, even as kids in the 70s and 80s, there wasn't that much blackface like in the 50s and 60s. They were moving away from it. It was just one of those weird to see it moment type.
Yes. No one knows it's Hannibal. Hannibal does the big reveal, and there you go. And then they're able to prove that the bad guy did it all along and they had nothing to do with it. There's not that many memorable moments. Like, they didn't have a montage because they're in Las Vegas pretty much. Right after they free this professor, they show the guy falling to his death, and then you realize, oh, this is not over yet. We're just getting started here. So that was a fun little take on things. You know, the A-Team's doing their usual characterizations with the disguises. Everyone had a disguise and a role, and that was fun. And then you have, what was it, that armored car they're driving in? It's like the most bulletproof armored car, and they're speeding down the road in this. This thing would probably go 20 miles an hour if it had that much armor plating. It had a happy ending, and of course they get away from Lynch once more, and like every other episode.
Really, the most memorable thing about this is what we talked about. Just the plot was actually kind of deep for this, and it was really fun. My thoughts and rating of this. This was a 3-star episode to me. Why? The story was pretty good. Had the feel of a good A-Team episode, but lacked the montage, which I like. Yes, you want some seriousness with your A-Team, and there's plenty of that in this. People dying, everything else like that. It just felt like it was a little bit lacking, but definitely wasn't a forgettable episode.
I'm gonna give it 3 stars also. I think it's better than average. It's not great, it's not excellent, but definitely better than average. It had a lot of funny moments, a lot of characterizations, a lot of situations, and I like that they were in Las Vegas. That was a fun location to put them into. I thought the whole, oh, he's a mobster starting out thing, that was a little silly and cliche, and it was cliche, but they got away from that very quickly, and he actually portrayed a corrupt government agent a lot better than he did the mobster, so I thought that was a fun take. And then it becomes A-Team killed the guy when of course they had nothing to do with it, and now they had to prove their innocence by taking down the real enemy. Could have been a little better, needed a little more A-Team fun, but you know, definitely a good episode. Definitely watch it, enjoy it.
Now on to The Out-of-Towners, directed by Chuck Bowman. Written by Frank Lupo, aired on March 15, 1983. The A-Team is called to New York City by a community of small business owners for being abused by a wealthy businessman that's forcing them into a protection racket. The team deciding to force the brute into paying back all the money he's taken.
And now the major takeaways from this episode are, this is the episode that had probably one of the worst sets of the season. Really, the worst set you've ever seen. If you've taken the Universal Studios tour, you have seen this set before, because that's exactly what this set is. I'm from New York, you can tell from my voice. I know what New York looks like. The Vespor has visited New York many times. This is not New York. See, this street is not New York. The street is too narrow, the buildings look nothing like New York. It is a Universal Studios set dressed up to look like New York, and very badly done. This is one of the worst sets I think I've ever seen on an 18 episode.
And I do believe they do actually say that this is in Brooklyn, and if it's not in Brooklyn, it's definitely one of the boroughs. This is not in downtown New York by any stretch.
Right, and they kept trying to get around this by showing clips of the Twin Towers, by the way. You'll see them showing that screenshot of the end of Manhattan. Oh, we're in New York City. We keep showing shots of New York City, and then we fade back to this ridiculously looking, horrible movie set New York City block here. It is so distracting how bad this New York street looks like.
There is a little movie called Death Wish 3 you may or may not have heard about, which is basically the exact same thing. Now, Death Wish 3 didn't come out until 1985. This was filmed in 1983. Well, as movies go, some are made a year or two before their release, so there might actually be a little bit of influence on each other here for this episode, because it's almost the exact same thing. A protection racket gone wrong, except in Death Wish, of course, they're killing people. Which is also another thing to note, that you literally have Face throwing Molotov cocktails out of windows. You have Murdoch hiding in barrels shooting.
Oh, remember the little plunger? So they have Amy hooked up to dynamite again. Not 1, not 2, but 9 sticks of dynamite. This little 1-foot cord, or maybe 2 feet, will be generous here. She pushes the plunger and a little poof again. It is so over the top, the weapons here.
Yeah, only flips the car. By the way, this was also put in a manhole. Not only with those 9 sticks of dynamite launch that manhole into orbit, it should have probably killed her because of the blast radius. She's probably no more than like 20 feet away from this explosion.
And don't forget, when they show up to the club, they have all automatic weapons. They're firing, they're destroying the whole place, and then the guys just all stand up looking around at all the wreckage around.
Most beautiful part was the scam they ran with BA at the beginning to get him on the plane.
Right, he finally agreed to it. They talked him into it. Flying's fine. I'm ready. I'm ready. And then, of course, they trick him again. They drug him, knock him out. And then what is it? We wake up now in New York City.
Now he's woken up with his phone number. As you see, Hannibal literally write the phone number and stuff it into his pocket.
Stuff it in. And then he only learns later when he tries calling a number, and it was like an information number. He realizes they scammed him again.
But another fun fact, like in a lot of episodes, they actually came up with a monetary value of damage they wanted. And this entire war, that would definitely end with more than the amount of money that I'm about to tell you in.
But Face worked out the whole amount of all the damage and money they stole from everybody, and it was
$166,200.
Hannibal, for the whole entire time, is getting the main baddie of this, saying, he keeps quoting that amount. I want that money, and that's what it became about. And he kept reading that exact amount over and over again. And it builds up into the most ridiculous war. So the baddie calls on his henchmen, and they all start showing up. And now the war is happening, explosions happening everywhere, and of course the A-Team beat them very easily. So they tried to throw in a little comic relief. Face is acting as a cab driver. So he's following them in the cab, and someone gets into his cab and wants the ride. And Face is like, no, but of course this is New York City, so the guy has an attitude. And Face is like, well, all right, if you want a part of here, but don't say I didn't warn you. Chubby looking guy is now captured in the back of Face's cab while the whole war is taking place before him. Again, a very ridiculous situation, but they tried to add a little comic relief. Tried being the key word.
Well, I loved it because that guy was a butthole and he deserved it. He told him not to get in.
And then he's running for his life at the end of it. Now, the ending is very disappointing in this episode. And this is a problem I'm going to have a lot of A-Team episodes. It's very open-ended. What happened at the ending? So they beat the bad guys. The A-Team's victorious. They want the money. So they're claiming they're going to take him back to his main office, wherever this is, open the safe, and just get the money. And then what happens to the guy? He's let free. Why weren't the police involved the whole time? There was just so many weird aspects. And the ending, again, is left open. It's all left with, Face has to return the cab. And, I'm going to date this one. It really was left so open-ended. Like, weren't they arrested? No. Were they sent to jail for all they did? No. Are they still going to bother people? Who knows? At least they got the money and that's the end of it?
No, Ramses, this is the 80s. They made up and it will never happen again.
Right. I guess that's what we're going to believe.
So, Ramses, tell me, what rating do you give this?
I badmouthed the set, and I still will stand by that statement. That set was awful. It is the most unbelievable New York City I've ever seen on a TV show. That's probably not true. I'm sure I've seen worse, but that was pretty bad. But I know it sounds like I hated this episode. No, I actually enjoyed this episode a lot. This is one of the most over-the-top, ridiculous, funniest, craziest episodes. And it's amazing what you can do with so little to work with. Pretty much they had 3 sets for the whole episode, yet they made it work. You know what I mean? There's a lot in this episode. I'm going to give this 4 stars. I know you're all shocked, but yes, I really enjoyed this episode a lot. It's a lot of fun. This is probably the best episode so far this season because this is what you want to see when you're watching a show like this. You're expecting cartoonish humor. We got a lot of that. You're expecting over-the-top moments. We got a lot of that. You're expecting weapons everywhere. We got that. They even had the montage where they're building everything in the city, preparing for the big fight. You had Amy had some good moments in this episode. You had Murdoch and BA were collecting garbage from all over the city to dump into the bar, and that was a great payoff when that finally happened. Sounds like I didn't like it, but there's aspects I didn't like, but it was a lot of fun. I really did enjoy this episode.
Now, my review is that it was actually a 4 stars. I absolutely love this episode. After seeing the rest of the season, I have to say that for season 1, this is by far the funnest episode. It has everything you want in an A-Team episode. It has them getting hired, it has montage, it has the over-the-top action, it has a fun story. The only thing that they don't have is Murdoch getting out of the hospital. But I mean, the amount of explosions and action going on, this probably took a lot bit of their budget. If you like Death Wish and you love the 3rd Death Wish movie, this episode is for you.
There's many more episodes to go, so here we go again. Holiday in the Hills. Directed by Arnold Lavin. Written by Bev Grehowski. Broadcast date March 22nd, 1983. The A-Team is coming back to the United States after a job they did in Guatemala. And then as they're flying, the engine starts to fail and they're forced to do an emergency landing. Where? In the backwoods of South Carolina, of all places. And in South Carolina, they come across a group of men trying to burn another man at the stake, who turns out to be a surveyor. They save the surveyor, then they must defend their position by the crashed airplane and hope to make their way home. This is one of the more interesting episodes, and I think we're going to be here a while on this one, but here we go.
Yes, it's interesting in all the wrong ways. These are some of the standout things that we saw in this episode. Once again, it begins with BA having to be forced on a plane, this time with the Novocaine again, with that nice slow roll.
Novocaine.
So here's something important to note in a non-serialized series is this. They bring up the Jamestown episode with Amy in this one, so I thought that was actually very interesting.
This won't happen often. It will sometimes, but to actually bring up a moment and they're already mentioning up something that happened previously, that was actually interesting. You won't hear that much because they want you to be able to watch every episode as its own entity. They try not to connect things that you won't remember. It's a nice nod, I'll put it that way, but it didn't matter to the story.
Now we're going to get to the parts of the things that really blow away our suspension of belief. First of all, they went to Guatemala to get money back for the diocese. Well, they don't exactly mention which diocese. They're from LA. When they show you where they end up at, the only logical conclusion you can make is that this must be a diocese for the New York area, which only deal with the upper New England areas. And not all of them.
Yeah, the plot was very weird, and it's like a throwaway line, right? Like, they just sort of were wondering, why are they on a plane? Why are they in Guatemala? So they're flying away, and they just sort of throw the line away. Oh, it's a good thing we helped the diocese get his money back. That's the important part, and then the engine pretty much goes out. It's like, really? That's the whole explanation of why they're in Guatemala. One throwaway line.
And the reason this is important is they crashed in South Carolina, so they had to have been flying to New York to give back money. They state in the episode that they're going to be picked up by Amy at the LA airport.
And she's already waiting at the airport for this. They're just getting into South Carolina. She's already at the airport waiting for them. How does that work?
Wait a second, that's only 3 or 4 ways by jet. They weren't in a jet.
No.
They were in a turboprop plane, which means try doubling the time, if not more.
And that's another thing. Are they going to refuel this thing? It's a joke that Murdoch pretty much took whatever he could find on the runway, and that's what it turned out to be, this cheap prop plane.
Well, they said it needed repair.
The plane crashes, but how are they in South Carolina? How is Murdoch flying to the right when he should be flying to the left? They quickly rush the plot of the story. They quickly have a crash landing.
The point of the show was they were upset with a surveyor putting a road through the middle of their land. They don't mention anything about eminent domain here, so yes, it may go through some of their lands, but not all their lands.
Right, so I don't even know what to call them. They don't really have a name or a group. They're just angry South Carolinians in this area. And surveyor is trying to put a road through this backwoods area of South Carolina. And they're pretty much militia now with the shotguns and the anger and the let's burn him at the stake. And we're not kidding. They were going to literally kill this guy if the A-Team didn't show up at the time they did.
We're going to burn him alive.
Right, for wanting to survey to put a road through their area. That's what the plot of this is. I know it's crazy.
Now, I mean, this episode did have some good montage in it, and did have some very fun parts, like Face dressing up as a priest to help them get the money back for the diocese, and then using that to con the daughter of the leader of the mob and for parts to make a ultralight flyer so they can help the surveyor get back to the hospital.
They have this flyer that Murdoch's going to be flying in, and he mentions he saw it in some movie.
Last Thursday night, they showed Flight of the Phoenix. These guys crashed in the desert, and they fixed their aircraft by redesigning it. Will you let go of my arm before I get gangrene?
So yes, so Murdoch saw this, and now he's building the same exact thing, and that becomes a montage. But Face, using his abilities, has to get all the parts because he's Face, and that's what he's expected to do, and of course he does.
In Hollywood, when a guest star talks, they get paid more. Guess what? The guest star didn't do it all in this episode.
So yes, the surveyor, this guy here, he's at first knocked out. So okay, I understand. He's knocked out. He's not going to speak. Then when he's on the ultralight being rescued by Murdoch, he's very clearly awake and conscious. Guess what? He still doesn't say a word. What were you doing here? What happened? Why did they attack you? No, those questions don't matter. Who cares? Very stupid. I'm sorry. I did not like that at all.
Oh, and let's not forget that Murdoch is singing all the while in German. And
it's one of the most annoying. Yes, when me and Vespor were watching this, I was like, please stop. It's supposed to be funny, but it was so cringy and annoying. Murdoch is singing in German the whole entire time that he's flying in this ultralight. Very loudly, very obnoxiously, very badly as he's flying him to the hospital that's like a few miles away. We don't know what we want you to say during this, so just
sing this in German.
So just sing something randomly in German? Oh, okay. This was a very low-budget episode, let's be honest. It was a very low budget. It's taking place in some backwoods with a plane prop there, and them just running around the woods for the whole time. It's a very cheaply done episode. They reused a lot of stock footage, a lot of moments from previous episodes.
And it was obvious they were trying to stretch the episode out. I mean, this was very obvious. They showed a lot of them literally just walking and running around.
You have a moment with Hannibal hiding under a log as they walk by him. It's like they're stretching the episode out. There's not much story going on here. It's very weak at best. A lot of elements don't make any sense.
It's time for the ratings, and I give this a 2-star. This is watchable. There are fun moments in this, but when you sit down and just take a moment to think about the episode in passing, there's so many plot holes. Why were they in South Carolina if they were supposed to be flying back to get with Amy? At the same time, it makes no sense. It just felt rushed and quite frankly a little bit unbelievable, wandering around the back hills of South Carolina, fighting some, for lack of better terms, hillbillies. So Ramses, what do you think about this?
Well, I didn't like this episode, but I didn't hate it. There's actually a worse episode, which we'll get to very soon, but it's not a good episode. It's definitely low budget. It's very badly written. It's such a stretch and filler episode. The whole situation is ridiculous. I couldn't believe this episode. I'm sorry. It's more funny just how stupid it is. I think that made the episode a little more watchable. The ultralight was stupid. The thing kept falling apart as Murdoch is singing that stupid song. Very badly done. But I'll give it 2 also. I'll be generous and say there's worse. It's definitely watchable, but it's one of those watch it once and try to forget it. I thought the whole plot of this was very stupid.
West Coast Turnaround, directed by Guy Magar, story by Babs Grayhowski, aired on April 5th, 1983. The A-Team are called in to protect a small-time farmer and delivering his produce to the market, namely watermelons. Blocking them is the land-hungry Chuck Easterman, who has control of most of the town and the sheriff's department. They have to fight the clock as the produce slowly starts to rot.
Now, this is an interesting episode because it's another one of those stereotypical A-Team episodes. They're being hired by someone. There's an evil entity that controls the whole town. This happens a lot. So Chuck Easterman is the bad guy for this one. And of course, we have a corrupt sheriff. So here we go. I think this is the second time now we have an incompetent sheriff showing up in one of these episodes. And they are doing so many illegal things. It's ridiculous to try to stop this business from happening because he wants to control the whole produce market for the whole entire territory. It's so over the top ridiculous, but it's actually a lot of fun. Let's look at more of some of the memorable moments too.
This is the first appearance of Billy the dog.
Oh, that's right.
A lot of the more memorable things are sort of more like plot holes, and some of it's actually editing in itself, like the cinematography. So I'll talk about some of the plot holes. Now, this bad man, Chuck Easterman, wants the entire valley cut off. Well, there's a problem with that. Amy and the daughter of the farmer get back to their house during all this. They don't explain how they got back to their house through roadblocks.
Easterman's gonna do whatever it takes, and he has all these thugs working for him, and they're pretty much literally blocking off past, and even the sheriff is working for him. Like we said, the sheriff's corrupt. So how did Amy and the daughter of the farmer they're trying to stop get by all this?
Well, I mean, I guess you could assume that they snuck through like moments before they put up the blockades, which were already up, by the way.
Right, very silly.
If he has that much money, he could literally buy the debt out from underneath of them and steal the farm that way.
Exactly. If they don't get this through, that's it. They're broke. They're done. They're out of business. All right. So buy up the property. Obviously, they're struggling. They're out of business. Why don't you beat them that way? No, we're going to be bullies and thug them and block them and do all these over-the-top ridiculous things. So yeah, it's a little silly. He went all through this just for them to not make a lot of money anyway. You might as well just left them alone.
To make payments.
Right. So already we have a very stupid bad guy here, but that's what makes A-Team fun.
They use a helicopter to drop watermelons on the bad guy's truck.
Right. So you've heard of bombs. We got watermelon bombs in this episode.
Well, one of them goes straight through the windshield. Then they cut away and see that there's no hole in that windshield as the car flips. It's just one of the minor things. It was fun, worth mentioning. I don't hold it against the show because everybody does it.
It's hard to cover every single little editing mistake. Don't forget, episodes were made in the 80s without realizing that we would have DVDs and Blu-rays and digital copies where you can frame by frame everything.
But one of the best parts of this entire episode is the montage and joke around Amy's new car.
That's right. Amy's new car, and they kept stressing it. It's so silly. Exactly. She's driving this little Rabbit or something, this like little tiny hatchback two-door thing, and she's all excited. Finally, I got a new car.
And they turn it into basically a rolling tank, which is amazing. However, unfortunately, they do get defeated and the car is destroyed, which is basically the end of that joke they built up, which is actually a very good episode to look at in the build-up of a good joke.
And there was a good payoff.
Now, we mentioned Billy earlier. Well, at the end of the episode, they make some jokes about Billy wanting to go after some people and things. Well, Murdoch falls on the ground and then is suddenly pulled across the ground.
I mean, obviously we know someone pulling him, but...
Because it was cut off so you couldn't see past
Right.
his elbow.
But it was funny. I like when they do like, what? It was real all along?
Much like the episode in New York where you have no idea after a big firefight and blowing up half of Brooklyn.
Right.
There was no explanation of what happened to the bad guy after they got the project.
Yeah, there's another, and I don't like when they do this, a very unconcluding ending where it's like, okay, what happened? You're ending the episode here, but what happened to the bad guy? Did he go to jail? Did they arrest him? Did they call in people to take care of the corrupt sheriff? Nobody knows. Did the business take off? Who knows? All we know is that Face had to settle for a very low payment on watermelons. It barely helped save them, but they live another day. But we didn't hear if they beat the bad guys. They could just do this again. We didn't hear if the sheriff got taken care of. He can just do this again. So pretty much the A-Team did nothing is what it comes down to if you think about it with the ending we got.
The A-Team can't testify because they're wanted
right. They
by the military.
They can't be imposed.
So if we use just sheer logic, I'm going to assume that the next year they come over and just kill them.
Right. I have a feeling we never see this family ever again. Either they go out of business or they're killed once the A-Team leave. It is so stupid. How can you not have a proper ending here? Yes, I'll admit, the Billy the Dog joke is funny. I like that that's how they ended it. But can't you give us a throwaway line? It's a good thing they're arrested and won't be able to do this again. Can't you give us that?
Let's go on now to our ratings of it. I give it 3.5 stars. Great build up to jokes. There was great chemistry. There was great action on this. I mean, it was some tremendous action here with the trucks, breaking roadblocks. And because of that, just a hair off of probably getting to 4 stars, only because of the unsatisfying ending with you have no idea what the hell happened. I don't know much, but I do know that California doesn't like guns. At all, even in the 80s.
Well, I didn't love the episode as much as you, but I didn't hate it really. So, like I said, there was a lot of fun moments. It's definitely had a lot of the check marks of things you want to see in the A-Team episode. They even had a fun moment where they conned the truck driver. There was like another truck coming that was supposed to help the farmer by letting him use the trucks, but the bad guy wouldn't let it. So the A-Team's able to con this guy by pretending they're highway patrol that are weighing the trucks, and then they pretty much just steal it from him. I thought that was very creative. They had a lot of fun moments in this episode, and explosions happening everywhere, and Amy's poor little car that gets destroyed. Murdoch was so over the top in this one. He was probably funny. He's acting as horses. He has an imaginary dog. He's just all over the place. I do think that the story did not conclude well, and that's why I'm going to lower a little bit. I'm going to give it 3 stars, 3 solid stars. It definitely is better than average because there's a lot of fun stuff in this one. If you're going to write a story like this, have a satisfying conclusion. This is not a satisfying conclusion. One More Time, directed by Arnold Levin. Story by Babs Grey Husky. Originally broadcast on April 12th, 1983. The military police finally captured the A-Team, but Colonel Lynch doesn't get much of a chance to gloat about it when a high-ranking State Department official steps in and coerces the A-Team into a covert operation to rescue the team's former commanding officer, General Ludlam, who along with his daughter have been captured by a power-hungry dictator in Borneo. So let's give our plot points and some thoughts on the episode here.
Well, I want to point out this right off the bat. This episode here marks for the rest of the season a more serious tone, as in there'll be 1 or 2 episodes here that aren't quite as serious. They're in way over their head. They're in situations that are far more deadly. They took care of it in the pilot episode, but only just barely, and they had an entire town to help them with. This time we're getting into situations where it looks like only bad things can happen, and then through the magic of cinema they don't, but even it leaves you going, this might be just a little too serious for the A-Team here, just saying they're only 4 guys. Yes, they're amazing, but you're now talking entire armies are taking on.
Yeah, so this was their take of, I guess the writer want to do something a little different, a little out there, so now they're going to be working for the government. Let's see what they can really do in a conflict situation. And I think that's what they were trying to do here. Did it work well or not? Well, stay tuned till the end to see what we think on this. The episode starts out with a fun moment. Hannibal's a struggling actor, and he's playing a bit part. Is he playing the creature, or is he playing the woman next to him? That's the fun part of it. Lynch is on him again, and the funny moment is Hannibal's actually using the name Lynch for screen name. So everyone's like, where's Lynch? Where's Lynch? As Lynch himself is coming to find him. Hannibal's the old woman, not the monster you think it to be. But there's this very special guest star who appears here. Who was the director of this movie?
Danny Wells.
That's right. You may remember him as Luigi.
What'd you make that pizza with?
Anchovies, grapes, and cheese whiz.
I don't like that thumping sound.
Boy, I wish Mario was around.
Good old Danny Wells is the director, and we recognized him right away. Luigi to us is one of those recognizable actors, and he sounded exactly like him. He was so perfect in this part. It was actually very funny. It was a little bit role, but he was perfect for the role. I thought it was great.
This episode was great. I mean, they start out strong, but then the A-Team just starts managing to somehow always screwing up, whether it's their fault or their own. The reason the A-Team's so fun is that they always manage to muddle through it. No, there was no muddling through what happened to them.
Yeah, it was very weird that they even got captured. That whole situation is far-fetched. So yeah, Lynch is onto them like we mentioned, and now he's chasing after Hannibal, who as disguised as this old lady is now stealing a motorbike. So this is a whole chase scene. Then he meets up with Face, who's trying to date a woman at the time. So Face is just randomly on the street here trying to date a woman. She's like, there's no one else. And then the woman shows up, Hannibal just as a woman, and Face jumped on the motorbike. So I thought that was hilarious.
Oh, by the way, he would avoid capture if he just stood there.
Right, exactly. Why did Face go along with him? I don't know. They're racing off. Oh, we have to meet B.A. B.A. crashes through the wall. He's in a car, not his van, by the way, just random car. And what happens? You know, the comic relief, they all crash, meet in the middle. They're captured. Funny, haha moment. And now finally, Lynch has won. Or has he?
That's when we come to the real story. State Department's like, sends a person. We need you to rescue the general. And while we can't set you free of these charges, we can, however, allow you to get a head start.
They should have just let them go. You're already saying you do this for us and we'll turn a blind eye. Why not say you do this and you're dead to society's done? That's it. We don't care anymore.
Oh, and by the way, they also imply that Colonel Lynch is only doing this to improve his career.
Yeah, South Pacific, they're going to fly to plane to Borneo. So they're setting the A-Team there. And then how do they knock out BA? The military drugged BA. And now they're the ones that knocked him out. So I guess everybody's getting into the drug BA gimmick here. So now we're in Borneo and they have false information. They're finally moving in on the base that they expect the general to happen. And where do they wind up?
They wind up assaulting the kitchen.
Right. So, yes, they got very bad information. And again, this is Keystone Cop stuff. And the evil Bornean dictator general, whatever he is, captures the A-Team. And now we're back to square one where everybody's captured.
Oh, by the way, they also mentioned that Hannibal is on the jazz again.
Yep, he's on the jazz. They have 4 hours, by the way. Otherwise, that's it. They're leaving him in Borneo to fend for themselves.
You know what's even more ridiculous than that 4 hours? Is the fact that Murdoch and Amy are literally trailing them within eyesight.
That's right. Murdoch and Amy are following the A-Team on their own plane that Murdoch stole. Again, don't ask questions, we won't. And they're also, while this is all going on, they're able to see everything going on and able to trail the 3 other members of the A-Team all the while, all the way to Borneo. But yeah, so that's how they insert Murdoch and Amy into it. They just happen to follow on their own airplane behind the military's airplane, because that makes perfect sense.
Yeah, some special forces they were.
Exactly. It's very rushed now. This Bornean general, he wants Hannibal and his friends to talk because he feels they're American agents. And Hannibal has this whole plan that he'll be the one to go to the firing squad because he has a plan. No, we're going to put Face to the firing squad because it's funny to do that. So Face is now about to be executed, and he asks for a last request. They give him a cigarette, and they put a bullet into one of the oil drums before, because you always want conveniently placed gasoline-filled oil drums on a base. Face throws the cigarette at the oil, and nothing happens. So yeah, it wasn't powerful enough to set it off. He's about to be shot, and good thing Amy had a flare gun on her, because she shoots it from nowhere, and the whole thing explodes, and there you go, you have your A-Team explosion.
And a good fight, and a good escape. Literally, they end up with a wonderful joke of, man, I wonder if Lynch is following us. And then Hannibal goes, oh, we got at least a couple of weeks head start on him, and they literally drive by him, turn around, chase ensues, and BA's going, couple of weeks, huh?
I think our opinions on this episode is going to differ a little bit. I think it's very rushed, but it's a funny ending.
Let's get to the ratings. Ramses, tell me.
All right, I thought it was good at points, but not so good at points. It's definitely not a bad episode. It had a lot of action. It had a fun story. It took them into a different element. We got to see what they were like as former elite troopers back in Vietnam. I didn't have as much fun as you probably did watching this. I think that the story seemed very rushed. They went from being captured by Lynch, being told they're on a mission, to suddenly being in Borneo, rescuing the general, and then they're freed from Borneo, and then cue funny ending. I don't know. I thought the episode just needed a little more. This might have been a better 2-part episode, you know, if they stretched it out a little more. So I didn't love it much, but it's definitely better than average. I mean, you have a lot of fun stuff going on here, and just because it's different doesn't make it bad. So I'm going to give it 3 stars. I did not feel satisfied by the ending. I know you did. I thought it was such a rush battle in Borneo.
Well, my 4-star rating trumps your 3-star rating. I felt it hit a lot of the tick marks that you come to expect in an A-Team episode was serious, and it was different. I totally agree with you on that. And it's different in a good kind of way. Things unfolded in what you would see in a sort of a spy novel. It was solid. It was fun. Things didn't go according to plan, but you still had a way out. I do agree that this probably should have been a two-parter, but this was proof that the series was trying to do things differently, and not every episode was trying to be the same. Push one if you agree with me. Till Death Do Us Part, directed by Guy Megar. Written by Babs Grayhosky. Aired April 19th, 1983. The A-Team must rescue a reluctant bride from the hands of her would-be husband and former business partner of her late father. With the team's arrival on the lake side, Face becomes the target for Hannibal's newest plan, to wed the bride. This episode had some very good, memorable moments.
This is a Hollywood take on what a Texas town is like. They're all evil, they're all conservative, they're all wearing cowboy hats. So you have a guy is forcing a girl of the guy that was murdered to marry him so that he can get the fortune. Her friend gets a message left on her answer machine saying, help, help, help. She runs to the A-Team. They drive off to Texas, and that's where our adventure takes us to.
And in all honesty, this is one of the more elaborate plans that you can follow. They infiltrate as caterers. It is through this that we get to see a lot of fun with Murdoch eating soap, which is their fake cake, by the way.
You have to suspend belief when you watch 18. These plans mostly would not work in real life, but to drive up to someone and say, I have the cake, and they're telling you you already have the cake, and then Murdoch will take a bit of the frosting, which is really shaving cream, by the way, eat it and say it's delicious, and they're like, oh, okay, it's a delicious cake, we'll let you through. That's how they get into Crash's acting as caterers.
But it gets better from here, because eventually Murdoch impersonates the girl that they rescue and ends up marrying the bad guy.
But he's coughing so much because he ate the shaving cream on the fake cake. The big reveal when the veil is pulled and it's Murdoch, and he makes a lot of funny comments as seen here.
But I didn't go through all this to see how I looked in white.
How the whole plot played out here is they are able to get her away from this wedding, but they still have the problem, how do we get her out of this situation? Well, Hannibal comes up with a solution. If you marry her, he can't marry her. Rent a little chapel, they have a video camera, and they show Face reluctantly, very reluctantly by the way, marrying this girl to prevent the whole thing. And now we have our B plot of the story, which is Calvin Cutter versus Hannibal and Face, pretty much, because now Face, due to marrying her, Calvin Cutter has to now deal with killing off Face because he's now the legal heir to the fortune that he was trying to get, and that becomes the B plot of the story.
What this leads up to is the longest helicopter chase in season 1, and maybe the entire series. They have to, of course, drug BA yet again. This helicopter chase is satisfyingly fun. And it ends with the helicopter going down, crashing, due to the fact they lost fuel because for whatever reason the bad guys could only hit the fuel tank on the helicopter in a chase.
Yeah, they kept shooting at the helicopter, and there's a lot of funny ones with this helicopter chase. They kept shooting with little, wasn't it like just a pistol, handgun? Yeah, and every time a shot hits, it only hits the gas tank, by the way. So it's like, wow, the luckiest shot ever. He couldn't hit anything else, but maybe 3 or 4 times he actually hits the gas tank. So of course they run out of fuel, and this leads to one of the funniest moments of the episode. Murdoch is able to land the helicopter with no fuel safely right in front of a gas pump, and then the shocked gas attendant there fills up his tank, and then as a present, Murdoch gives him the Captain Bellybuster hat. Well, let's talk about how he got the red cap, actually. This will be one of Murdoch's personas in this, so it's not a long-lasting persona. So they're all hiding out, and Hannibal goes to get them food, and he comes back riding a bike, and he has like a huge generic bag that written Captain Bellybuster Burgers on it, and it's really funny. So he's handing burgers out to everyone, and then he says, I have something even better for you, Murdoch, and he puts the Captain Bellybuster red hat on him, so now Murdoch acts as Captain Bellybuster. Even when he's flying the helicopter, he's wearing this red Captain Bellybuster hat, but then when he fills up the helicopter at the gas station, he gives it to the gas attendant as payment for his services as a real hero to them, and they fly off. But the funniest moment is how they drug BA with this. How did that all work, Vespor?
Here's how they knocked out BA. It was actually a clever plan. BA always assumes they're going to drug him, so exchanges his burger with Murdoch's, because they know they have to escape by helicopter. Well, Murdoch eats the burger, pretends he's drugged, passes out. Well, in all actuality, it was actually Murdoch's burger that was drugged, and BA eats it and then passes out as Murdoch stands back up and asks how his acting skills was and gets a compliment from Hannibal.
It's silly but funny. How did this all conclude? The great helicopter chase, and they pulled the Dukes of Hazzard here, right? All you have to do is get across the county line and you're safe. They win, but it has a funny ending because the gas finally runs out right after they cross the county line. And what do you think happens?
They crash.
Yeah, they sure
And
do.
then they show the ending of the episode. All of them but BA has a cast on in one place. And the whole joke here is not to say itch. But in the end, BA does get the last laugh because he said he didn't want to fly.
He's the only one that survives the crash without an injury. And again, this is the A team, so no one got hurt really badly.
And Face's marriage is annulled.
Oh, yeah, they just annulled it. So, yes, their marriage of one day is wrapped up very quickly in a courthouse.
Yeah, Face is definitely a modern man.
Okay, that was pretty much the episode. Now it's time to give our ratings on this.
And I'll give this 3.5 stars. Why? This episode was really fun, was what you would expect from an A-Team episode. The interactions between all the characters were there. There was some silly situations and had a fun story that you could follow and didn't have to suspend too much disbelief.
I think I enjoyed the episode, yes. It had a lot of great character interactions. I think Murdoch and B.A. were really good in this episode. Hannibal was great. Face was great. Every character, even Amy was great. Every character was great. So I'm going to give it the same score, 3.5 stars. I think it definitely is better than average. It's a good episode. It's one that you'll have a lot of fun with. There's really not that much bad about this episode, except that the storyline's a little at times. But I thought that it was funny. It had me laughing at many times. The action was great. It wasn't afraid to use the whole town. It was definitely not a cheap set. It was a very nice area they were using here. Definitely check it out if you haven't seen it yet. Alright, here we go. The Beast from the Belly of a Boeing. Directed by Ron Satloff. Written by Patrick Hasberg. Broadcast on May 3rd, 1983. The A-Team are called in to rescue a hijacked Boeing 747. In doing so, BA must overcome his fear of flying in order to rescue Hannibal and Face, who are willingly giving themselves up to the hijackers in exchange for hostages that they've already captured.
Now, remember 2 episodes ago when I say they start getting a very serious bent? Well, this is where they pick up again on this.
Yep, so hijackings were happening a lot. I don't know how many remember how many were around the 80s. If not, it happened all the time. Of course, the world has changed since 9/11, but before 9/11, hijackings were actually usually very common. They would take over a plane, they would have some demands, they would land in Libya, and then that would be the end of that. So this was playing off on that. For this episode, the plane company wanted to use the A-Team because they owed them a favor because they used to let them fly as former Vietnam vets for free when they needed to.
Which, you know, I don't think they had altruistic feelings for hiring the A-Team simply because of the fact that if your plane gets hijacked, shouldn't you contact the authorities?
Yes, for some reason they wanted to keep this lowbrow. They mentioned it, but I still don't fully understand why they wanted to use the A-Team over getting the authorities and government involved, but whatever. And it seems like the CEO was unavailable. He's on a tropical island somewhere or in Europe or something. So the plan is to have Hannibal disguise himself as the CEO. Face will be his right-hand man. And while this is all going on, they're going to exchange themselves for all their hostages. Now the hijackers have the CEO of the company on the plane, and BA and Murdoch are going to rig the fuel tank somehow so that they can't get away with this. So of course, it all goes wrong, but it wouldn't be A-Team if it didn't all go wrong at some point.
BA gets trapped on the plane. He goes into a comatose state that he comes out of every now and then.
So now Murdoch pretty much is working on himself because Hannibal and Face are captured. Hijackers realize very quickly that Hannibal's not the CEO. It's a very bad disguise, and it doesn't fool them. And now, one by one, Murdoch has to get these hijackers separated. So he comes up with all different ways to capture the hijackers while BA is knocked out the whole time.
Now, the only problem with this is that Murdoch is just not 100% because previously he was released from the hospital as being declared sane.
Murdoch is declared sane suddenly by a quote-unquote doctor in the hospital that he's in. That's how the episode starts. This doctor, we don't know if he's a patient or if he's the actual doctor. It's sort of left
I
to
think he's the doctor because they do throw away a line there to say, you know, he snapped finally.
Right, so it's whatever. This doctor's telling him that he's sane now. So that's it. They sign out the papers. They start clearing out Murdoch's room. So that now is a new part of the episode where BA has to accept or not accept that Murdoch was declared sane, and Murdoch's going to have to learn to live with his sanity now. So yeah, that was a fun little subplot to this whole situation.
Felt like some of the earlier airplane movies. They involved hijacking or collisions or something like that. It had a very good feel to this.
And there's another B plot where Amy is left off the plane, but she's still involved in the situation, and she has to watch the control tower. While the A-Team are trying to get the plane back from the hijackers, Amy's in the control tower talking and working with those in the control tower tower there helping the A-team get the plane down. And we'll get back to that in a bit because that becomes very interesting later on. So everyone had their role. BA finally snaps out of it, so he's back now with us. And now it's pretty much, we have, 3 hijackers left. 2 of them are captured, left in the bottom of the airplane. Face and Hannibal are freed eventually, so now it becomes your typical fight. And this is all taking place on the airplane. It's actually quite exciting how they're able to pull off so many different tricks.
Things go kind of awry after a little bit, simply because of the fact they eventually have a firefight on a plane.
Yeah, I mean, everyone knows the reason you're not supposed to fire a gun on an airplane is depressurizing. If you have a hole anywhere, that's it. You've lost all pressure and the plane's going to plummet.
They're all on the airplane having this firefight. The bad guy gets sucked out at like 36,000 feet out of a decompressing plane. Well, he's the only one that gets sucked out as the A-team just stands there. The rest of the A-team would have been following him out that door at that height.
And it's funny, they mentioned, because again, this is a PG show, it's a good thing he had his parachute, probably landed safely in Baja, California, which is in Mexico. Again, it's not ever revealed if they ever go after him or what happens to this terrorist, but he got out safely. He's the only one that got away. So yeah, so let's talk about the climax. What happens is, and this is such a weird happenstance of events, a gun goes off right in front of Murdoch's face, and the gunpowder blasts in front of his eyes, and now he's blinded. He's the only one of the A-team that knows how to fly a plane. Hannibal said he'll give it a try. Murdoch blind is going to help him fly it, and the control tower now has to fly him down. And this is where Amy comes into play, and I'm glad, because I like when Amy gets to do something in an episode. So the control tower says that we don't want a disaster on our hands. They're going to send them into the ocean. That's it. Goodbye, A-team. Amy pulls out the gun from the guard standing there. She holds them at gunpoint.
Oh, by the way, that guard was asleep, by the way. He might as well have been. He was like, oh.
Yeah, the easiest swipe gun ever, let's put it that way. So yeah, she's able to get the gun right off of this dopey guard. She's holding them all at gunpoint, forcing them to help them land properly. I am glad Amy got to do something, so good for her that at least they gave her a purpose here. But yeah, so now it becomes Hannibal has to land this plane. They're moving on the runway. Again, suspend a lot of belief that this would all go well. He's able to land it.
Oh, by the way, they were flying to the tip of Baja, California.
And they were running out of fuel the whole time. That's another aspect we should mention. So they should have landed in San Diego, or even Tijuana they should have landed. I mean, the closest airport is really where they should have wound up. Running out of fuel just as they reached the LAX airport. Hannibal pulls back on the stick. Oh, they made it. They're flying out to the runway, and then what happens?
Well, they reused some footage from this little-known movie called Airplane.
Where's the forklift? Forklift! It's over there by the baggage loader.
As you can see, this is probably the most perfect ending you could have for an A-Team episode, just how silly and over the top it is.
Right, they even have Hannibal waving as if he's in that scene that's used from another movie, with them crashing through the terminal. The whole sanity of Murdoch is then what the ending is made of, where we find out, what was it, the doctor is insane now. So the doctor that called Murdoch sane is actually insane, so they deem that Murdoch is still insane because the doctor was insane when he told him he was sane. And there you go, you have your funny ending where they're dragging him back into his room.
And now for our ratings. I, the Vespor, give this a walloping 3 stars because it's a different setting. It's not your normal. It's fun. The situations are really fun. The interaction is still there. There's some great silly moments. It takes some of the characters out of their comfort zone, like BA, who's working to overcome it. It was slow to build up. It's a very slower pace. I feel this is a good example of a wonderful episode that you can enjoy.
I enjoyed the episode too. I mean, I like when they put them in other elements and when it works. I don't like when it's in other elements and it doesn't work, but I think this one worked. It's fun. It was the A-Team pretty much doing their whole hostage take, and it worked well. You had all the characters doing their part. You had a lot of different aspects. You had the Murdoch is sane. No, he's not really sane. You had BA having to deal with being on a plane, and he's frozen because he's on a plane. So you really do see, yes, BA is terrified to be on a plane. Not the best, but yeah, I'll give it 3 stars also. I think that's where it's like right above the middle. It's definitely fun. If you want to see a fun A-Team episode, you can definitely watch this and enjoy it. All right, we're on to the final episode now of Season 1.
A Nice Place to Visit, directed by Bernard McEvety, written by Frank Lupo, aired on May 10th, 1983. The A-Team find themselves in a small town, paying respects to a fallen comrade from the Vietnam War. While there, they discover that the 4 Watkins brothers rule the town with intimidation and fear. The A-Team then seek to avenge his murder and bring his killers to justice. There are a lot of special things about this episode we want to talk about.
Now, let it be noted, this is another episode with a corrupt sheriff. Well, this one, he's really just afraid. The sheriff who actually stood up to them was killed, and this guy's just afraid for his life and he's doing whatever they say. But it's another bumbling sheriff. That's why, again, the police are put out of play altogether. But yeah, let's go over some of our thoughts and the special highlights of this episode, because there's a lot.
Well, it starts with dispatch stock footage. So
yeah, they mentioned they drove through Arizona. We lost them in Texas. We don't even know where they are. They could be in New Mexico. They don't make it clear where this town is. We know it's in the southwest United States somewhere. That's all we know. We don't know the exact location. But yeah, the stock footage was so stupid. You can very clearly see these are like 1970s, 1960s looking old style police stock footage of them on the phone and dialing things in and pushing buttons. It looks so awkward and cheap.
As they finally get there, they stop to get gas and quickly learn that the town is run by the Watkins brothers, as the person filling them up informs them that they just can't go to the funeral. And the A-Team asks, well, why? And that's because the Watkins brothers says so.
And the A-Team are not going to accept that. There's a whole story of how this guy, and it's such an inserted character, and that sort of hurt the episode too. He was close, their best buddy, he was like their comrade, so close that he's living out there without even contacting them, and they only come after the guy dies. But yes, they show a picture of all five of them in their uniform together, as that they were really close blood brothers, and they're not going to miss this funeral. This was like one of their own, and he's a fallen comrade.
Yes.
So
I mean, this is the first time you see them in military garb. The only problem with this picture is that it was obviously taken while they were in costume for that scene.
Because they all look 10 years too old. They're all their 10-year-old counterpart, their current counterpart, taking this picture of this guy.
They also had the exact same medals and things.
Right. They didn't try very hard to hide the fact that this was a picture taken in 1983 when it should have been a picture taking place in 1973.
They go to the funeral. That's where they tell their stories about how important this guy was, which makes you think of, if he was that important, he would have helped you all instead of living here going, I wonder what my guys are up to.
They make a very big point of how close they are. The four guys of the A-Team are telling their stories. Yeah, he really helped me when I did this. Oh, I remember this. And voiceovers while they show generic army footage of a helicopter flying, and you know it has nothing to do with anything.
After they leave the funeral, they are quickly run off the road by the brothers in a tow truck.
This is the worst scene.
And the entire time that this is happening, you've already seen B.A. do his fancy driving, eluding cops on the crowded streets of L.A. Now, this tow truck and these drivers are apparently so elite that B.A. can't do a single thing, even though he sees them on a lone road barreling at them, and they were warned beforehand that these people would try to stop them, and doesn't do anything to get out of the way or dodge.
It is so bad. This scene I think bothered me more than any more. This is called, we have to come up with the unbelievable out of character way to stretch this episode. So they have it where the Watkins are driving the tow truck and BA is just driving along like la-di-da, what's going on? Every time they get hit, he gives like a weird look and just keeps driving on. Really? You see, the Watkins, who are known enemies of this town, you're very well informed that that's the case. This was the most out-of-character nonsense I ever saw. So, of course, what happens? The tow truck keeps hitting them. They're still not reacting. Even as the tow truck is side to side, parallel to them, they're still la-di-da, driving along like, who cares? It was so stupid. This is the most out-of-character moment I think we've ever seen in the season. And then, of course, they get run off the road, and the van flips over, and it's all damaged, and they drive off in the tow truck. Haha, we beat you.
Well, I would argue that this is the most out-of-character, because this episode is still young at this point. As they say, but wait, there's more.
So they wind up back at the gas station now, and they're all accusing him, how dare you, and then the leader of the Watkins shows up, this big burly guy. He's the head Watkins brother, and he's like, I don't know what you're talking about, but we'll fix it. And then they tow in a now stripped van where the radio's missing, the tires are not in good shape anymore. So now they're like, yeah, you could fix our van. Really? After they just destroyed you, you did absolutely nothing. You're gonna let them now fix your van, because again, we gotta stretch this episode out.
By the way, you also put all of your weapons in the back of the van.
Right. They all just walk away from it, not caring that they have all these important weapons. And of course, the bad guys, the Watkins, stripped the car and they took the weapons, and now they have those to use. Yes, the A-Team would really, with all their skills and knowledge, would have allowed this to happen.
So, I mean, they try to give reasons why they would just let them fix it, but the A-Team knows these people are bad. I mean, like...
corrupt, bad, evil, dangerous. Yeah, you insert word here. The friend got killed by these guys. That's why they're here at this funeral. He stood up to them, and obviously they killed him. We'll find out later from his wife, played by Joanna Kearns. So she mentions that he got killed in a road accident where they pretty much veered him off the road.
Oh, you'll also find out that the sheriff was going to talk to him, the real sheriff, but he never made it to them.
Right.
And
so
they never found the body.
So he was killed by the Watkins too. This episode, it gets stupider and stupider as the story goes along. The deputy sheriff, who's now the sheriff, goes along with the Watkins, let them fix your van. So now what are the Watkins gonna do? They're gonna rape the wife and Amy because they're alone in the house. That's their plan here. And I'm not making this up. That's literally the plan they had here.
Oh, and what's even worse is the fact that she and her husband love each other very much so. She knows where he keeps the M60 machine gun and ammo, but doesn't know where he keeps the ammunition for the rifle.
So the two Watkins brothers, they're drunk, they're horny, they want these two girls, they're banging, they're trying to break the chain, which is a mile long, by the way. Like, they open the door and the chain to the lock door, like, opens up so he can pretty much grab his whole arm through it, ruining the whole point of using a door chain, I would say. So she's bumbling, where's the ammo? A gun that's hanging on the wall, by the way, is this gigantic rifle, or whatever this was. Hunting rifle on the wall. She grabs this, they're overturning everything. And it's not until, obviously, the A-Team shows up and saves their butts that it gets them out of that situation. But wait, there's more. Like, wasn't that a whole closet full of weapons, we find out?
Yeah, as I said, she knows where the M60 machine gun and ammunition is, but didn't know where the rifle bullets were, which were apparently under his seat, which is a very strange place to store your ammunition.
Yeah, I would say you're sitting on your ammo. That's great. So the A-Team go to take back the gas station, but now the Watkins all show up with their better weapons. So now the A-Team is defeated and catch again, making the A-Team look like total morons in this episode.
The Watkins at one point did capture the A-Team. They, at this point, have been revealed to be murderers.
You have like 100 people that you see all throughout the episode. None of them were willing to stand up together. You go to the diner, oh, we're too afraid. The sheriff, oh, I'm too afraid. You have all the people, oh, I'm too afraid. So it's pretty much like these four brothers control this whole entire town. And so what do the bad guys do to get rid of the A-Team? They put them in the back of a pickup truck. They take them to the border of the town, kick them off, and drive off and say, don't come back now, you hear? That's pretty much it. Yes, these killers who killed the sheriff, killed the fallen soldier here, they take the 418, that was the closest time they've gotten defeated, and they just kick them to the curb and drive off. So now how do they get back? That's another funny situation, which is like, oh, whatever happened to them? VA is trying to get a vehicle. Cars, they're left now in the middle of like a desert road out on the outskirts of the town, and cars are speeding by, no one will stop for them. So BA says, that's it. No one is getting by me this time. He waves his hand at an old couple driving like a convertible. They pretty much throw the old couple out. Here's $400, good luck. And they speed off, leaving them now stranded in the desert. They don't even drive them back with them. No, that'd be too smart.
Yeah, they say they'll bring it back to them.
They'd never see it again. The cars never return. We have no idea what happens to these.
When you know for a fact that after watching so many episodes of the A-Team, they would have at least drove them back with them.
Yes, I don't know why they didn't take them back. That was, again, bad writing. We need your car. Here's $400. Please, we have to take it to town. You can have the car afterwards. Very simple solution to the situation.
Now, if they were going to montage it into something amazing, I can understand that, but they were just literally wanting a ride back to town.
That was it. So, yeah, they get back to town, and, of course, now it has the fun conclusion. I'll use that word lightly, because even the final battle is kind of stupid here. Pretty much, they take a bulldozer and destroy the quote-unquote gas station. I'm quoting it, because when the gas station is destroyed, you very, very clearly see this is just four walls with nothing in it. So it's an empty gas station building. I don't understand. The whole thing makes no sense. So they destroy that. All the parts of their van are now found in a closet there at the garage, and it's all just so stupid.
And then we're just going to talk about this too. They come back and go, we have proof that they ran over best friend here. Here's his blood we have in this little Ziploc baggie that we got off there.
Yeah, a little bit. Okay. And then all of a sudden, the townspeople get courage. Oh, good. Now that the A-Team captured everybody, now we'll act all brave and stand up and do what we should have done all along against these four brothers. And yeah, the whole thing is just so stupid. And the ending is sad, solemn music as we show the five members together as we say, now you've been avenged, and fade to white, and there you go.
Now, let's hear your rating of this. Ramses, I want to hear your thoughts before I go off on this, because I think I hated it more than you did.
Yeah, this is definitely the worst episode of the season, and that's sad, because I wanted to end it on a high note. When you heard the synopsis of this episode, because, you know, every time we watch an episode, they give you a brief synopsis, I said, oh, that sounds interesting. It's going to be, they had to help out a fallen friend, and it's going to be a town that's taken over, but no, it wasn't anything like that. It was the most ridiculous, out of character, stretched out episode. The moments are bad, the characterizations are stupid. I mean, you have a moment where they're trying to rape Amy and the wife. You have moments where the A-Team just dopey and stupid and forget who they are. All of a sudden, funeral, and you have a whole town that is afraid to stand up to four brothers who really just own a gas station and don't do much else. I mean, it's really badly written. I know this is written by Lupo, the creator of the show, but I must say he really messed up on this one, and I'm sorry to say that. You know, he created a great show in the A-Team, but he doesn't know how to write an episode if this is what he's writing. This was just awful. There's no funny moments. There's no great, like, wow, they got him. Even when they beat him, they destroy an empty shell of a gas station, and it's just so unrewarding. I mean, this is really just an awful episode. It's very hard to watch. And you have this best friend of theirs that we never even heard of. He just shows up there. They show up for a funeral, and it's like we're supposed to feel sorry for someone they're only mentioning in this one episode who probably could have done better than the A-Team because he wouldn't have been afraid, but his wife is stopping him from fighting. This makes no sense. Why is the town so afraid to do something? So yeah, I'm giving this 1 star. This is by far the worst episode of the season. This is
I'm going to cut you off here because now I'm going to start my rant. I give this a 1 star. I was originally going to give it a 1.5. But after hearing and thinking about this some more, it's going down to a 1. This episode is highly offensive to me as a lover of the A-Team. The thing that I cannot forgive is when you take established characters and then have them not act like how they've acted before. Every episode they have acted as competent people. Yes, their plans didn't always come to fruition, but they knew what they were doing. They could overcome Contra fighters, armies. Nothing could stop them. Yet 4 brothers not only showed them up, they stole their weapons, dismantled their van nearly, and the A-Team can barely handle them, even in a fist fight. They turned the A-Team into the Z-Team. It was not fun to watch. I mean, you could suspend disbelief, but I mean, the proof in the pudding that this show was terrible is when you find out that their A-Team buddy wanted to use his M60 machine gun to kill these people who have murdered multiple people, but is talked out of it and instead gets himself killed. When they do something like that, I can't support it. And I absolutely despise this episode. Now, I've seen most of the other seasons. I have to refresh my memory on it. I do believe this may be the actual worst episode of the entire A-Team series.
All right. Unfortunately, it ends on a very low note. But now, before we wrap things up, let's give our final thoughts on the overall season. We like to review everything at once, and that's what we're going to do here, and then we'll wrap it up. And that'll include the pilot, too, because that is part of season 1.
All right.
So this will be all episodes.
I want to say this. This is the first season. It is a mid-season filler. You don't expect much for a mid-season filler. Just something to get you throughout the rest of the viewing season. But you know what? It was awesome. It was the basis for which the other 3 and only 3 seasons that came after. They didn't have a big budget. They did what they could, and they came out pretty good. For the most part, they started the trend of what the other seasons should contain. The montage, the breakouts, the mission openings, or being in the mission and overcoming all odds. And in all honesty, they got a lot of it right here. Now, in those previous episodes where I said they were too serious, well, there wasn't a lot of comedy in that. They were actually kind of serious. You have Murdoch to lighten things up, but sometimes even he can't do it when you get so serious like some of these other ones. Overall, this is the beginning. Better episodes will come after this. So out of a 5-star for this season, I'm going to give it a good solid 3 stars. So, Ramses, what do you think?
I'm going to agree with Vespor. I think this is a 3-star season. It was a very good start. They very clearly developed what this show is going to be about. It's going to be about these former Vietnam heroes. They're going to be paid to hire. They're going to help out those who can't stop the bad guys who are, taking over these towns or companies or hurting people. Yeah, they're not only about money. They'll take the money if you have it, but if you don't, they're still going to help you. So it shows that they're good guys. I think they developed all the characterizations very well here. It's only going to develop further as we get into the 2nd and 3rd seasons. You'll really see the characters come to their own. You'll have Murdoch doing a lot more characters and imaginary things happening. You'll have BA with a lot more comedic moments also, and his interactions with Murdoch are going to get stronger. Hannibal, they very clearly showed how Hannibal's character is going to be. Face is going to get a car, convertible, and he's going to have a lot more play. And Amy, unfortunately, we'll talk about her in a second, she glued everything together. So the first season built on a lot of nice themes, and I think without the first season, you wouldn't have the A-Team. You had to start somewhere, and they started off very well. There's a lot of classic moments in the first season, and I think they did a very good job. I think the pilot set the tone very well, and it sort of just carried on from there. Unfortunately, they had a few duds. We mentioned the bad episodes, but they had a lot of great episodes. And I think if you start out at that level, you can only go up, and they do go up. It does get better from here. I really enjoyed it.
So, without further ado, remember, click subscribe, thumbs up, and ring the bell.
Well, that's it, everybody. Thank you for joining us for another retro review here. We can't wait to hear from you. Let us know your feelings on this first season of A-Team. We really want to hear about it. We'll see you guys next time.